What we're hoping for tonight is just a chance for you to share how things are going specifically around your kind of events and event planning, event execution. With Earth Day just having happened, we're hoping that you have some great stories to tell, great stories to share. So I have enabled screen sharing for everybody. And what I'm hoping will happen is that one of you, or maybe a couple of you from each of your communities would be willing to either just tell us, or if you have pictures to share, if you have anything you'd like to share, we'd love to hear how things are going. And then, perhaps people have some thoughts in response or some suggestions or something to, share in terms of how you've solved a particular problem or otherwise. So I'm going to open the floor and invite anybody who'd like to talk a little bit about how things are going in your community.
I'd be happy to get started with a little follow-up from a presentation I did in November. That's okay?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. And just before you get started, if you do have something to share or you'd like to, maybe you can raise your hand and then I'll call on communities one at a time. So great, Megan, yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Sure. I don't know if you remember, but last fall I told you that Medfield was about to start its Count It campaign. And our Count It campaign was a concerted effort to drive people back to our website and find out what they've been doing since the last time they were there. So we had about 3 weeks of intense publicity, articles in the newspaper, social media posts, trying to get everybody back to count it. Let's see what you've done, count it. So we had really great results. I thought we were pleased. And I can share some of them with you. We had before we started, we had 732 actions taken, and post-campaign, we had 962 actions that people had reported. So that was a 31% increase. So that was amazing. Get people back. And households, we actually got 22 new households. So in addition to bringing people back to count what they had done, we actually got 22 new households to hop in there. And so we also got, 22 new users, and our household actions increased 16%. So from where we were to where we ended, it seems that most people had, done more actions within the last year that they could report. So that was just a really quick report on it. I thought we had a really cute logo for our Count It campaign, and we kind of had fun with it. It was short, like an intense, I think officially 2 weeks, but of course we left it open for 3 weeks. And so we were really pleased with that. So anybody have a question about it, or
first of all, awesome, Megan, really good. Do you have any sense, you did a bunch of outreach, do you have any sense about what was most productive in the outreach you did?
No, I don't. I think, in addition to the, social media and the newspaper, we also, sent several emails out to our constituents. So I don't really know from which of those things we got the most response, but I was, again, something clicked to have gotten, 22 new users. So that was good, reaching brand new people.
Yeah, terrific. And I know that we have a few visitors from Medfield. Would love to hear, in addition to what Megan shared, anything else, or is that going to be a second part of the sharing?
I do hope that my friends will talk about Climate Week, which just wrapped up last night with, of all things, a fiddle concert and a natural lawn demonstration. Kirsten, are you willing?
I just got back from donating blood, and I'm still a little dizzy and woozy, and I'm not up for it.
Okay, I'd be happy to, if that's okay. Will you chime in if I miss anything?
I will.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. Medfield works with, let's see, Medfield has a couple organizations in town. One of them is Medfield Environment Action, and this week they ran a Climate Week activity, and it was basically 10 days of activities all around town. And I think in total, I just counted up there 25 different things going on. And we basically put it out there and said, would you like to host something in your yard? Whatever it is, your time, you choose it, whatever you'd like to do, we'd love to support you. And Medfield Environment Action took on the publicity for it, you know, setting up markers at their people's homes, as well as giving everybody a sign-up sheet when they came so we could get more names, that sort of thing. But we had, I think, you know, we got together after the fiddle concert last night and reflected on it. And, you know, there were events that were really well attended and some that hardly had anybody at all, and maybe even nobody at all. But we feel like it was a really successful week. And again, they ran the gamut from a hike on conservation land to people working on a colonial vegetable garden, somebody demonstrating how to build a temperature blanket at the library, people talking about their solar panels, rain barrels. What else? So many different things. Oh, there was one of the highlights was 60 people went to a dinner at church on Saturday night, and it was called Help is on the Way. That was called Help is on the Way.
Help.
And it was a 3-course tasting menu of featuring kelp as the ingredient. And so that was very fun.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, so we have
Very
to
creative.
yeah, that was a lot of fun. And we had baby goats, robotic mowers. So it was a fun week, and we think it was a success. And even for the events that people didn't show up for, you know, they were out there, people knew who the people were who were talking about them. They just know that their neighbors are, you know, making changes and willing to talk to other people about them. So would Kirsten, Jackie, Julia, would you add anything?
I think we just said at our wrap-up meeting that we thought even, I think you kind of said it, Megan, but even Megan, I'm so sorry. Even the people that didn't get any attendees, it was just, they were more connected to our organization just from having been asked, and we started a dialogue, and also just the publicity of the events around town, I felt was very positive. Many people were aware that Medfield had a climate week, and even if they didn't attend, we saw that as a positive.
I just want to say I was involved with a few of them. Kirsten and I were involved with telling people about ground source heat pumps. And, you know, it's amazing. So we're a small town, not very small, but smallish, 10 to 11,000 people. And all this organization sprang up just, how old is it now, Megan? 3 years old?
3.
So amazing amount of organization. You can imagine all the people and the work that went into this. And I don't think any one person attended, you know, even 10 out of the 25 events. There was so much going on. So anyway, what I'm looking forward to, Megan, if we're going to do this, I'm curious, we can talk tomorrow, whether you're going to be able to come back with another report like you just did about the Counted campaign and see what bumps we get from all this activity. It might take a while, but anyway.
Right. Well, we'll definitely have
Congratulations to everybody.
more subscribers for our newsletters. So that was a plus. At every, you know, event, we had a newspaper sign up, newsletter sign up. So that was good. And yeah, and it was nice, you know, collaboration, and, you know, there wasn't one thing for everyone, right? But there was something for everyone. You know, you could bring your kids to see the baby goats. You could, you know, talk about your robotic mower. You could learn about your ground source heat pump. So
Yeah.
we think it was
So, Megan,
good
there's
all
a
around.
question in the chat from Karen in Acton, asking what kind of a budget did you have for your Medfield events?
So the only thing we spent money on in advance was posters for sandwich boards. And I think that was maybe $250, Julia, does that sound right? And then
Yes, that's correct.
so, and Julia's our graphic designer, so we had really fun looking things. And then the signs in front of everybody's house, they worked really hard to, you know, minimize any expense. And they took old, you know, election poster, you know, plastic things and spray
Oh.
painted them, cut them up, put leaves on them. And used steaks from the garden supply store. So really tried to minimize expenses there. I did at the end of the week pay to boost some Facebook posts on Medfield Environment Action and Sustainable Medfield. And I think I spent probably $50 in total to do that. I'll have to, reflect and see what happens when I look at the analytics from that. But I felt like, the weather was pretty lousy all of last week until the weekend, that just we needed a little bit of enthusiasm. So I ended up boosting them. So, to answer your question, about $300.
Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. Ellen, do you have a question, or you have your hands up to share? Is that right?
Share.
And Marcia, do you have a question, or were you going to also share something about what's going on in Newton?
No, I want to know, I'd like to get the document that was just shared by Megan, 1. And 2, I was wondering how you got the goats.
Oh, Kirsten, do you know about the goats?
Yes, I can speak to a gentleman. His company's called Goats of Dover. He gets a real kick out of short, GOD being his initials. And he's a lovely, interesting guy. And you could just Google Goats of Dover. His name is John Bennett. He was very happy to come and have his goats graze in a little pen. He just had 3 4-day-old baby goats. So that was a big hit with the little kids. And he does runs a business that's sustainable land clearing, poison ivy management. And he'll give you all the stats of how many goats and how many days can clear an acre and those kinds of things. And he also does birthday parties as well. So you can have a birthday party while you're clearing.
He charges a fee.
He does. He came to us for no fee at all, though, and was very easy to work with and amenable, and said, yeah, it's great, and passed out a few brochures, but he's not a hard sell. He's just kind of does it for the love of it, it seems. But yes, he does charge a fee and to when he brings his goats in his truck to your lawn for clearing purposes or for a party.
Thank you.
I
Sure.
just said one more thing. I put in the chat the document that we used for the week's activities, and we thought long and hard about how to create that document. In the end, we ended up with a Google Doc so that it could be updated on the fly, and we gave everybody access to the link to the Google Doc so that people could find it. And we did have a mountain bike ride that got rained out that we moved the day for, so it was helpful to have it be a Google Doc.
Great,
Right.
great.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think that
thank
really
you.
worked out the flexibility of it rather than being a printed or permanent PDF online schedule. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you. Now, Debbie from Natick, do you want to ask a question, or would you like to share?
I can share if you like.
Okay, so we'll have Debbie and then Ellen from Wayland after that.
Okay. We did something very similar to Medfields, but we didn't take a whole week about it. We just had the weekend. We called it Earth Day all around Natick, and this is the second year of doing it. So last year we took it from a town green model with a fair to just a distributed sort of I call it fringe festival model. And we had something like 46 different events happening over the course of the weekend. This year we had fewer people who wanted to host an event, but and partly that was because we decided to put a little bit of the activity on the town common and have some tabling, because there were organizations that really just wanted to get information out to the public and didn't really want to organize an event that required people coming to it. It threatened to rain, but the rain held off for what we called the Earth Friendly Fair on the town common. But then Sunday was a complete wash. It was just rainy. If anybody had scheduled a hike or a litter cleanup or anything outdoorsy, which was most of them, there was a free film at the Center for Arts in Natick that was a documentary about climate activism. So people could have gone to that, but we just unfortunately lost the whole day too. So I love the idea of spreading it over an entire week, because then things can be shifted around and shuffled. But that's I think it was less well attended than last year's because it wasn't brand new and also because of the weather.
So thank you, Debbie. Any comments or questions or responses to Debbie?
I'd just say that as you're talking about just the weekend, one of the things that was with the whole week is it was kind of an exhausting PR push. Like every day you had to get something out on, and it seems so easy, just post on Facebook, right? But you're posting in a couple groups and you're trying to do Instagram, and are you sharing it to the other places? And so, 2 days has some appeal.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Debbie. We were definitely thinking about you when it was such a rainy weekend. We were like, oh no, Econadic has such an amazing thing planned, and I hope they're doing okay.
Oh, thanks. Would you like me to share? I can share just a quick overview if you want to see what we had planned.
Sure. Why don't if you could just do that quickly, and then because
Yes.
now I see several other hands who are going to be sharing. So, but yeah, go ahead. If you could share just quickly.
Yeah, I have our past events page because we didn't use a Google Doc. We just used our hang on a second. There it is. We just used our website to promote everything as a separate event, and we framed it with the words Earth Day.
Nice,
So
nice.
here's some examples of
Oh, terrific.
what was sent, what was offered.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's nice. That's really, yeah, it's very eye-catching to have that kind of Earth Day bold heading.
We just took each photograph and framed it.
Lovely.
Oh, and the big highlight was the Repair Cafe, which was indoors and happened on Saturday, and that was Natick's first ever Repair Cafe. So I'm glad I was reminded to mention that, and that was very well attended.
Nice.
If I could add, this is Rick, also with Debbie at econadic.org, who was one of the volunteers with her. And if I could add, I think the fair had elements that were really fun for families, that were interactive, and there was a good vibe around it, literally, because we had music, a couple of different groups playing, including a drumming group. And we had Native Americans there helping people to weave a little thing. So it was nice. I mean, it was small, maybe 20 booths, but in conjunction with the we had the advantage of having farmers market going on indoors right next to us on the common. And so in our EV petting zoo was outside in the parking lot right beside it. So it got pretty noticed, and the weather really wasn't a problem at all with that. It was nice. And the events that day that I went to were all very well attended. So I thought this year went well. I'm not sure we even have the numbers yet, do we, Debbie? And know in terms of, sort of growth as Medfield was showing benchmarks last year, this year, and followers and stuff. But we'll get that soon enough.
Yeah, nice. Nice. And Debbie, I really like how you use the events page on your Econadic website. That's really nice use of kind of how having all your multiple things going on. So great. Well, thank you. Thanks very much. And again, congratulations to Econadic for, great organization. Okay, we're going to move on to Wayland. Ellen, tell us what's been going on in Wayland.
So for something different, not going to talk about Earth Day. We did a campaign starting in about November to promote energy audits, which was called Wayland Saves Energy. And we did this with All in Energy. And Mass Energize has an MOU with them, which will allow any Mass Energize community to work with them. And the vendor that we ended up working with was NECO, New England. I forget what NECO stands for. So you can see the website for the program that All in Energy developed with us. And we did a series of outreach activities, and over 200 people between October and say, excuse me, end of April have signed up, have made an inquiry to sign up for an energy audit or installation, and we feel like that's actually pretty darn good, great numbers. And I want to, we actually did do something to try and understand which of the outreach worked. And I want to shout out to Abby Shoot. So Abby, raise your hand, smile over there. Our new sustainability manager, Abby, took a look at the data. So Abby, before we get to so I'll give you the headline, which I'll do, and then Abby can explain the chart she made. So we did a whole bunch of stuff. We had banners around town. We had 2 4-week social media campaigns. We did a letter from the town manager, and we had a message on the back of the census mailer, which goes to every household. There was canvassing done by Nico and presence at certain events, and there's a few random things. And I think we really feel like the social media was the thing that made the biggest difference, followed by the mail. But in particular, we got no signups immediately after sending out the letter from the town manager, but we got 70 signups in the 10 days following the mailing that went out that goes to every household for the census. On the back of the census, there's an opportunity to add a message. We had a relationship with the town clerk, and she called me and said, hey, we're sending this thing out. Is there anything you want to put on the back? And I was like, yes. So that was like gold because we didn't have to pay for it. The other mailing from the town manager, the banners were all funded by the energy vendors. So we actually didn't spend any Energize Wayland money. So let me have Abby just, this has a lot of stuff in it, but Abby, just to give Abby a chance to talk since she did this work, do you want to tell us what's in here?
Of course, yeah. So to kind of break it down, on the left-hand side, the dates, that is the time period where the actual outreach initiative was taking place. And then the outreach initiative is mentioned in that column. So as Ellen mentioned, you know, we did a variety of different things from social media to banners. And then of course, like the town census mailer. The number of applicants refers to just the number of actual accounts created by applicants. So it is number of people. But yeah, so I went through the date ranges that each person created an account and entered their information. And that's what the additional column of dates is. But you can see like the town census mailing was extremely productive. We've started to kind of break down our social media posts. We're still working on it, but we've noticed that the most feedback came from posts and outreach that involved monetary, like specific monetary incentives, like deliberately naming the tax rebates and incentives that people would receive, or displaying like times of year, like, hey, it's getting cold. Exactly. This is the perfect visual for it because yeah, getting ready for temperatures to drop and prices to rise. So explaining to people that they can save money from these incentives seemed to be a really big eye opener for a lot of them.
This was the one that also got a big bump because I think we were quite specific about the rebate. And I think those numbers, so we're going to analyze messaging, and we now have a new volunteer to help us who does marketing professionally and actually runs the digital marketing campaigns for like QuickBooks and Peloton. So she's got some expertise. We went with her this morning, and she's going to really help us spiff up our game. But I also thought what was interesting was, darn, there was one other thing I was going to say about this Facebook thing. I think it was, now I can't remember what I was going to say. So I think the social media stuff really worked. Oh, the other thing I want to draw your attention to is look when we did this darn campaign. The worst possible time to run a campaign is right before Christmas. For a variety of reasons, that's what ended up happening. So I actually think we got fantastic results given that we were doing it in the 2 weeks before Christmas, right? So I think we'd have even potentially had better results if we had run it at a more coherent time. That's a longer story about how that happened. So one of the things I think we'll be happy to share with folks, and I think this goes to what I was referencing earlier with Nathan, is that we hope to be able to package some of these social media posts, the banner PDFs, all that stuff, so that other communities can use them with a series of template, like the letter that came from town manager, the text we put on the back of the census mailer, and how we're tracking things as well. And we have some great analytics because we have one vendor, And so we can see in this, this is where I sum the data. So you can see 217 people. This is the people kind of currently in process with their audits and what they're doing. But we also had like 56% of the people who had audits done. There was no opportunity. They had already done everything Mass Save would have paid for. So that's interesting. We're going to follow up with those people and people who had asbestos issues. Say, if you can't do this, there's lots of other things that you can do. So we hope all these people, many of whom don't currently sign up with Energize Wayland or get our newsletter, to be part of that. But I think, Abby, that we really feel that we've learned a lot, right, about how to run outreach campaigns, and so that when we do our next one, we know a little bit more about what might be working, right?
Great, thank you, Ellen. And I don't know if you've seen, there's a few comments in the chat. One was Ellen from Harvard, I think, is really interested in some of your posts.
Yeah, we can. We'll be organizing those, Ellen. And I think one of the things, what I'd really like to do is, I'm happy to share them, and I'd rather share them with a little bit, Ellen, of which ones work the best. Now, of course, our marketing expert reminds me, which is true, which is it's sort of all additive, right? It's there, but where we saw a really strong bump, that is a big signal. It's not just noise. So I just met with the former chair of our select board. I said, oh, that letter from the town manager didn't work. And she said, actually, it's on my counter, and it's been the thing to remind me to follow up with this. So sometimes we're not going to be able to directly know, but there's some things that were just crystal clear from this.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I see a few hands. Karen, are you going to share something from what you've been doing in Acton?
Yeah, just quickly, we were inspired by what a lot of you did in previous years, and we did our first clean energy homes tour. We had 9 homes. It was Saturday, April 29th, so it was a really dreary gray day. And we had 101 people sign up, and 70 of them showed up. So it feels, in some ways it felt small, but the enthusiasm was really great. And we've already had one household contact a clean energy coach about starting the process of getting heat pumps. So anyhow, we think it was a good first try. And the other thing that we started in April was we did this neighborhood initiative in an Acton neighborhood where most of the homes are heated by oil. And we did some outreach that we have what we call a neighborhood champion, somebody who had already done heat pumps, and she sent out a letter to her neighbors, and the town kind of sent out a second letter backing it up, and then Abode and the town did a workshop, a Zoom for people, and they're offering this opportunity for a contractors day where 3 contractors will go into the neighborhood and visit all the houses and give quotes out to the people. And so far we have 9 people signed up to do that. So it's another beginning to learn from.
Terrific. Thank you. Great. Okay. Well, I think moving on, this is great. It's so great to hear about all the incredibly creative and diverse things going on. So yeah, Ellen from Harvard, how have things been going, and what events have you had recently?
Okay, so we had the Earth Day, similar. I mean, we went off the playbook that we had from Wayland. It was our second year, but of course it was windy, cold. It was actual Earth Day, so some of the same things you're hearing. And it's also school vacation week, so I'm not sure we're ever going to do it that way again. I think we learned a little bit, but I would say we beefed up our set. We had like a hub at our elementary school, but it was outside. And so we had vendors this year, which we've never had before. So we had about 20 booths, and we had a really good food. We decided food was what draws everyone. So we had someone come in and had a food set up, and it was all organic and whatever. So that actually got people there, but I think everybody was freezing and it wasn't great. And we did it for too many hours. We did it from 11 to 5, and I would never do it that long again. Vendors started kind of leaving it around 132 because we weren't getting the crowds and it was too cold. But we did have houses again, like we've had in the past, about 16. And I'll say two things about that. One, some of it was the same houses, some of them were new houses that weren't in it before. Some of them were enthusiastic who had come the year before and put in their heat pumps and everything else, and now they wanted to show their stuff off, so that was great. We did a debriefing, and the homeowners from those that had heat pumps and solar said the people who came were much more knowledgeable. They just saw a difference from this year to last year, like people just understood it better. They were more technical. They asked more technical questions. So I think that's something we learned from it. That was a positive. And then we had a fair number of things with gardens and open. We have farmers here, and some farmers opened up, and someone with a movable chicken coop with the rain barrels and all sorts of stuff that we could get the kids to. So that actually ended up being something pretty popular in the town. But again, it was a lot of work, and the day just wasn't great. So I'm listening to see whether we break it up, whether we do something longer over a week, whether we stay away from Earth Day and call it something else and not call it Earth Day, and come up with some other ideas. So that's the one thing. So I want to tell you about one other thing that may be something Mass Energize wants to think about. So I wrote a grant for some money, which Acton can chime in on. Karen might want to chime in on this a little bit too. So I wrote a grant for this thing that I call my flag project. So this is where anybody who now, the way we're going to state it, anyone who does at least 2 actions, signs up for Mass Energize or Harvard Energize, does 2 actions, puts in a testimonial or picture, I don't care what they put in, something that shows, that proves that they've done 2 things, and it doesn't matter what they are, we're going to put a flag on their property. So my point, based on what you guys done in the past and some of the research, is if we can get 25% of the people in town to have flags on their property, we may start to push people over the edge to say, oh, I'd like one of those, and why don't I have one? And, you know, what do I have to do to get one? So I got a grant, not as much money as I wanted, but I think we still can make it doable. And I know that Acton, when I talked, there she goes, Acton, when I talked to them, got ahead of me without a grant and created their flags. But I thought, you know, it'd be pretty cool if you drove through town, upon town, and you had whatever your flag is all over town, because I think it makes a statement. So I'm going to be working on that. Acton's ahead. They're doing a small, not ahead, but they're doing a smaller thing. And I think that's great. And we can see what they've learned. And then we're going to go forward with it probably in the next few months, but we've got to figure out exactly what we want to do and how to get the messaging out.
Great. Yeah. Karen, do you want to say something?
Ellen inspired us with her flag, but your flag was kind of small. And so Karen Herther was our person on the flags, and she just went really big, but we were inspired by you guys. But I have to say, it might be Wayland or somebody had a sign that said, like more like a regular campaign sign that said,
that was us. So we heat pump here, curious, and we used the logos from Newton.
I love that. It just said, ask me. And I'm like, and it was, I mean, I think this is like, okay, Energize Acton, but what is it, you know? But your sign was like, this is what it is, ask me. I thought that was great. So.
Yeah, and I think we're going to go with a bigger flag that just has our logo, a QR code, and just says something like going green or something that just gets to the point, that to what it is without a lot of stuff on it.
Mm-hmm. Nice. This is great. Okay. Well, I see a couple more hands raised. So Rick, were you going to add something from what's going on in Natick?
Already did.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think
Okay. And then-
Leora
and then
from Newton is also.
Fred, I also see you have your hand raised. I don't know, you also shared, or do you want to share something more?
Thank you. So I want to report, we heard a lot about my town of Medfield, which is great. And I want to report on my other organization, Jewish Climate Action Network, which also has a number of synagogues on Mass Energize, and we're very proud of it. So I just want to mention that we offered, as we do a couple times a year, we just offered it again last week, a training for how to run a decarbonizers program. And the program is all about peer-to-peer. Very simple recipe. You find 3 people, and it works for towns as well as houses of worship. You find 3 people in the community, one who heats with heat pump, one who has photovoltaics, one who drives electric car. None of them are experts. None of them are experts. Those 3 people are the program. It's good for a standalone program, can be in person or Zoom. And the recipe is all about finding those right 3 people and prepping them, but they're not experts. They're not talking top down. They're talking side to side, peer to peer, and the people show up. And this is the picture that is the typical end results. People in the audience say, wow, they made money. It looks easy. If they could do it, we can too. So it's a lot of the theme that a lot of us are doing in our communities, but it's very specific, very targeted training. So we had this this year, where are we? May already. So we've had 2 programs at synagogues, and we had the 2 people who've done those programs in their synagogues come and speak to help train the next batch. We had about 8 or 10 people who hopefully will take it to their houses of worship. I've been doing this for some years, and we keep making the program better and hopefully more effective. And I just want to let everybody know about it.
Great, thank you. That's super, super. Okay, thanks so much, Fred. And again, it's that neighbor to neighbor that's so impactful. So the messaging, so that's great. Okay, moving on, and then we're going to move into kind of the second section of this kind of evening. But Leora from Newton.
Hi, I'm Newton Energy Coach. I've met a lot of you. I'm sorry I don't have my video on. I'm running around a lot tonight, and I hope Marsha will jump in with other Newton things when I finish. And I'm gonna have to jump off after this. But we had an Earth Day celebration. We had about 30 vendors, a mix of heat pumps, solar, insulation, etc., as well as nonprofits and other community organizations. It was pouring rain, at least during the setup part, because it was that Sunday. And so we ended up going inside. Our indoor space was smaller, and we got fewer people, but the number of people we got really fit the space. So it ended up being, perfectly sized for that specific day. So that was our second year having an Earth Day event, which went, I think, as well as it could have. We also had test drives at the event. Many thanks to our wonderful EV task force for working to get, we had 3 electric vehicle companies, and I think a total of about 96 test drives at Earth Day, even with the rain. And then I'll just also say, with some of the other things that people are saying, we have a yard sign campaign, as you're talking about the flags. Our campaign is called For Our Future, with our 4 top energy actions. So one side of the sign says, "This house is for our future," with our logo and QR code and website. And then the other side can either have that exact same information, or we're doing personalized stickers. So we add a sticker that says, "Ask me about," and then you can have between 1 and 4 actions, where it's heat pumps, insulation, electric vehicles, or solar. So that's been fun. I'd love to hear your ideas as you figure out how to get these into the world. So it's one thing to create the signs, and another thing to actually get people to put them into their yards. So we're working on it. And if you have great success with that, I look forward to hearing about it.
Great. Marsha, do you want to add anything? Okay.
Say one more thing while Marsha is unmuting herself, is that we have an event coming up. So don't know what it will be quite yet, or don't know how it will go, but we are doing, many people have done these house tours. We're doing a sustainable street. And so we've gotten a group of residents, 2 strong leaders on a street that's 2 blocks long, to talk to all of their neighbors and get input and pull together. One afternoon, it'll be June 4th, mostly people hanging out in their yards and talking with people in the yards about all of the different sorts of actions that we're doing, but really just all on one street. So maybe you drive to the street, hopefully you bike or you walk or you take the bus to this one street, and then you just walk up and down and hear about all of the different things. And we've got our top 4 energy actions on that street, as well as things about composting and gardening and all sorts of other things, all in one place, one afternoon.
Great. Okay. Marcia, do you want to say anything? And then we're gonna. move
Can I
into
share the
second-
screen?
Yeah, go
Uh,
ahead. Yeah, I think you should be able to share it.
So this was Green Newton's booth at the Earth Day event, and that was a wheel for our future. And let's see, and you can see they had actions that we had actions when you spin the wheel. So it's a fun way to engage people, like you land on compost, and we talked about Black Earth composting, or you landed on insulation, and we talked about mass save assessments. The guy who's in this picture dressed up like a heat pump. So this was a lot of fun. It was, not a very expensive activity. I'd be glad to share the graphics with anybody who wants to put this together. The wheel, the 24-inch wheel, maybe cost about $50, if that. I'm not even sure if it was that much. So you see, like, there's kick, gas, drive, electric. Nathan, you know who did these graphics.
Ah, yes.
So anyway, it was a lot of fun. And then if the way we played it was that they spun the wheel. You could spin the wheel 3 times, say what you landed on, and then you would get a butterfly sticker. There's no big deal. But people just like spinning the wheel. They don't even care if they get a prize. We had a petting zoo. I'm going to stop the share. We had a petting zoo, which was expensive. I think it was over $2,000. So I'm really interested in the goats. That's one thing. We hired 2 face painters. The idea was we drew in a lot of young families and then, had their attention so we could talk to them about solar and heat pumps and weatherization. So we're definitely going to always have face painters, but I really liked Medfield's ideas and the idea of Sustainability Week. I don't know, Leora might fall off her chair hearing me say, but I think that maybe a 2-day event for a few hours. I don't know if they'd even go for that, but we're as Leora just said, we have a house tour thing. On one street, there's so many sustainable features in different homes, so it's just limited to one street in Newton. And so, the more we can share this information, I think the more we can get good ideas and adapt to our own communities. So thank you, everybody, for sharing good ideas.
Great. Okay, well, thank you. This is fantastic. And to hear, as I said, the creativity and the diversity of all of the events, all of the creative, ways to engage people. It's really inspiring. And it'd be great to be able to catalog all of these. We're going to move into kind of another section of the session tonight. And I'm going to introduce 2 of our, two people who are with us who did introduce themselves earlier from an organization called RARE. And if you haven't heard about RARE, you're going to hear a little bit more from both Frank and Olivia. And we at Mass Energize have been working closely with RARE, and you're going to hear more about RARE, but they use, and I'm going to let Frank and Olivia tell you more, but they use kind of a lot of behavioral science of the kind of thing that we've heard from Greg Sparkman and others to how to really engage and motivate people. And they have some thoughts on kind of the best practices that they've used in terms of the behavioral science to motivate behavior change through kind of these public events. So I'm going to turn it over to Frank and Olivia to share a little bit about RARE and what they're doing. And then we're going to end the evening talking a little bit about some collaborations and how you all and all of our communities can be involved. So Frank, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourselves and let us know what you're up to.
Sure. So I'm Frank Lowenstein. I lead the community channel of RARE's nationwide climate culture program. The community channel is focused first here on Metro Boston and how do we advance climate actions in Metro Boston. So we view Mass Energize as both a natural and a necessary partner and are thrilled to be here. It's fascinating listening to all of you describe your actions and events. You clearly are ahead of the curve and doing a lot of the things that RARE hopes that local groups will do. So I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled with everything you guys are doing, and it was such a pleasure to hear it all and hear sort of some of the common stories and sharing of ideas that's going on. I am going to share a PowerPoint now, and I'll present the first several slides, and then Olivia will take it from there, and I'll let her introduce herself briefly when she does that. So hopefully you all are seeing this, and
Yep.
I'm going to put it in slideshow mode. So now hopefully you just see this and not everything else.
Yeah.
Good. So RARE is a nonprofit organization. We're probably the largest international conservation organization that you've never heard of, because until we started our program here in Boston in October of 2021, we had never worked on the ground in the United States. But we are very focused on the science of behavior change. Greg Sparkman is a close partner of ours, as is Aras Yuli at MIT. We have an entire center for behavior and the environment that's staffed with behavior scientists. And we have run about 500 behavior change campaigns in more than 60 countries. These days, we have narrowed our scope a little bit to focus in and drive for larger impact. And we're working in the countries shown in green here across 4 different programs. Our Fish Forever program is our largest program. It works with artisanal fishing villages, helping them to come to common cause to adopt fish-friendly behaviors in their local community and to really drive those forward through social norms. Our land and that program works in the Philippines, Indonesia, Mozambique, Brazil, and a number of other countries. Our Lands for Life program is focused on supporting farmers in adopting more sustainable farming practices, again, using social norms. That works currently in just Colombia and Honduras and is expanding. Our Center for the Behavior and the Environment, as I mentioned, is driving to make sure that that behavior science, not climate science, that's a different program, that behavior science is part of the mix across many organizations. And we provide tools and training to other organizations. And finally, our Climate Culture program, which Olivia and I both work for, is focused here in the United States. And we started the planning for that about 4 years ago, because we realized that all of RARE's other investments, those 500 behavior change campaigns that we've made over 50 years, this is our 50th anniversary year, all of our previous investments were at risk if we didn't get climate change under control. And that if we are a US-based organization, even if we mostly work internationally, that it's really an obligation, a moral and ethical obligation on us to try and bring our behavior expertise to the climate change debate here in the United States and to climate action here in the United States. So our Climate Culture program is aiming to accelerate Americans to a 2030 lifestyle today. So what do I mean by that? What's a 2030 lifestyle? Well, part of it is emissions reduction, right? We don't want the kinds of fires that are bringing these kinds of skies to the landscape, or the floods, or the droughts, and we don't want them to get worse. We want to go from a situation where the IPCC report, when I read it, I'm like, oh, this is Genesis, right? This is flood and fire and damnation. You know, we want to go from that to some healing of the earth and some visions of hope. But it's more than about emissions and climate change. You know, we want this to be a lifestyle. We want people to see how this fits into and accentuates the things they want in the rest of their lives, how it saves them money, how it advances their health, how it increases the social esteem they feel from their network and creates a sense of belonging in their community. And I think I heard elements of these in everything that people were describing about their Earth Day and Earth Week and Climate Week events. So I'm really thrilled to be partnering with you all. Specifically on the emissions side, climate culture is aiming for actions in 4 areas: your home, your food, your ride, and your world. We've done some pretty extensive research partnering with California Environmental Associates, who does all the analysis for the California Air Resources Board, on what are the most impactful actions in each of those 4 areas of work. And we're aiming to get an additional 10% of Americans, beyond people who are already doing it, to adopt the behaviors under each of those 4 areas by 2030. If we can do that, that reduces our US emissions by the equivalent of the entire emissions of the United Kingdom, which is the world's 5th largest economy. So it's a pretty significant chunk that we can do through a fairly simple set of behaviors that are all technologically feasible today, accessible today, affordable today. That's what we mean when we say take on your 2030 lifestyle today. So how do we, so thinking about what we achieved by doing all that, you know, people are part of the climate solutions. We produce a collective emissions reduction. We all know that our individual emissions reductions, to some extent, are inconsequential, but our collective emissions make a huge difference. We achieve co-benefits for people so they see the benefits in their lives. And I personally am most committed to this last point, which is it accelerates systems change. If you get 10% more Americans adopting climate positive behaviors in their own lives, that is going to drive new markets that corporations are going to respond to. That is going to drive new ways that corporations feel they have to market things. And it's also going to drive new actions by government, policies that will support individuals in taking on these actions. So how do we do this? In climate culture, we think there are 3 key levers of change. The first is social expectations. You have to believe that others are doing these behaviors. You have to see them in some sense. That's easy with solar panels. It's sort of easy with electric cars. It's less easy with eat less meat or eat more veggies. And you have to believe that others think we should do it. We are social animals. We take on the behaviors that we believe our social network thinks is right. Now, this is really interesting. We've done some research on public attitudes, like what others think people are doing, what people think others think they should do. There's a little bit of a social norms bubble that we can take advantage of. Olivia and I don't really have time to go into that today, but if anyone's particularly interested in that or that data, I'm happy to go over that and just shoot me an email. We're going to share our contact info at the end here. The second lever is efficacy. You have to believe that you can do it. And I took a screenshot of that, of the fellow who was mentioning the panel of 3 ordinary citizens talking about their electric car and their solar and the third behavior, you know, and how important that is, that it's something I can do. It's something we can do together. And this is a key piece of efficacy. We believe that if we do it collectively, we're going to get what we want. So how do we increase that sense of efficacy? And finally, efficacy is about perception. How hard it actually is to do is about friction reduction. And I was here for the community practice April session, and I felt so bad for the presenters about the chargers and the electric vehicle incentives, because it is clear we have not structured a system for either of those things that actually does a good job of friction reduction, makes it easy for people to understand what incentives they're eligible for and how they will get them. So it's up to all of us to try and make that easier, right? So how does RARE do this? How do we get from the list of behaviors and the levers of change into sort of people's minds and get people to take action? We have 4 channels that we're working through. First of all, we have a social media channel that's working through influencers and through major social media companies to put these behaviors onto the devices that we all carry around everywhere. Second of all, we have a workplace channel called Green Shift that is working to bring these behaviors into some of the more stable communities that we have these days, which are employer communities. We have the community channel piloting here in Boston, soon to replicate to a second city, that is working to bring these behaviors to people through trusted community institutions. We are not trying, Olivia and me, on our own to create an infrastructure that's going to reach the 4.9 million people who live in the greater Boston metro area. That would be a little ambitious, to say the least, and maybe even presumptuous, especially when there are so many institutions that already have those relationships. So our role is to support those institutions and bring the behavior science to them. And Olivia will talk in a minute about how we're doing that. And finally, we have an entertainment channel where we have a deep partnership with Netflix and also an entertainment lab that works with producers and writers to put these behaviors on the screen. So you start to see, maybe as part of your favorite Netflix series, the family is debating what their next car should be, and the teenager's like, "Dad, why aren't you thinking electric?" You know, that kind of thing, that kind of influence that what we see on the silver screen is going to have in people's living rooms. Overall, our efforts are aimed at making these behaviors and their benefits visible, social, and easier, and going through 4 different stages of from not even knowing about these to adopting them: awareness, consideration, activation, and adoption. And we're really lucky. You know, we started our Boston program in October of 2021, and along comes the IRA in 2022, and just kicking in now in 2023. And those incentives are really going to be key to, I think, everything from consideration on. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Olivia to introduce first herself and then what we're working on here in the community channel.
Thanks, Frank. Hey, everyone. If you showed up late, didn't catch my name or from Frank just now, it's Olivia, and I am the Community Outreach Associate for the Community Channel. As I said before, grew up in Newton, local to Cambridge now, and that allows both Frank and me to be on the ground here in Boston for this pilot of climate culture. So the community channel itself is built around sort of 3 initiatives at this point. The most recent of which is our support to community climate activists, being modeled here today, and that is still taking shape. It's really awesome to hear from you all your experience, and be helpful if and whether we're wanted, and if our help is the right thing to sort of plug in here. The second track of work that we won't get into very deeply today, but is something where that's unfolding at this point in time, is our initiative Shine, Solar Helping Ignite Neighborhood Economies. And that is a sort of multi-pronged community development, workforce development, and community solar initiative, where we are going to be creating a series of solar arrays in low to moderate income communities of Boston, offering job training to LMI individuals, creating increased community solar sign up linked to those community rooted arrays, and eventually we hope charging electrified micro. That's exciting stuff. We're happy to talk about that another time with anyone who's interested. And yeah, and I guess I'll just say on that again is Rare functioning as a supporter and a convener and a thought partner to groups that are already highly skilled in the area. And one of the primary partner of ours there being Action for Boston Community Development, ABCD. We're also working with Resonant Energy. And we are very fortunate to have the help of Rob Wallace, who's from Baltimore and did a very similar project and had great success. So we've learned from him. And so lastly, to move on to events, which is sort of the focus of this evening and where we hope to be we have decided to track through the deployment of these large, colorful and interactive exhibits. And Frank, actually, maybe we could go to the next slide. Thank you. So we have these exhibits that we deploy around Greater Boston that focus on the 4 categories of behavior that Frank mentioned before: food, energy, nature, and transportation. We've chosen the following calls to action to go with those that we hope. I guess the reason we chose them was in part because they are relatable in the communities we're bringing them to, and also because the barriers to adoption are not large, and or we wanted to dispel some of those barriers to adoption for people. Yeah, next slide, please. So as I said,
we have a little bit more on this one, just showing the exhibits where they are now and some of the student powered supplements to them that we've just deployed.
Yeah, so these are the exhibits where they are right now at Brandeis University. We also worked with our design group and our team internally to create some add-ons, as Frank mentioned, that are more student-facing, more youth-facing, and they've been a hit so far. It's a whole lot of content at this point for people to absorb, and we've seen really great success with the interactivity of the exhibits. For instance, the transportation booth has a string that is equivalent to a typical EV charge that you can string around different points on the map of Boston to dispel range anxiety and get a sense of how feasible it is to do your daily commute or even a longer drive. Yeah, so why the exhibits, you might ask. We, through the exhibits, are able to engage people really, really successfully, not only through their interactivity and their memorability, but also the fact that we can often answer questions. Us or our other staff members on site can answer questions. Right now at Brandeis, they're unstaffed, which is new for them, but it's going quite well. We also, as I mentioned, are hoping to dispel any uncertainty around barriers to adoption. And we've had also some really interesting conversations on site. They were recently at the Peabody Essex Museum, and I had a conversation with some folks about the incentives available for purchasing an electric vehicle. So it's just nice to be part of those moments where it's like a pretty quick switch for someone to realize that what they thought was going to be a $26,000 to $30,000 car is actually more like 17 or less. That's really impactful. So yeah, softening barriers such as cost barriers. It also helps drive partnerships in that we have something to bring to the table when we want to show up at museums or other cultural spaces. And finally, last but not least, it allows us to spread our message even further beyond that event that we've brought it to, or that space that we've brought it to, and that we do through social as well as earned media. We have influencers who come and take photos with our booths and post those on their social sites. And in that sense, we are able to reach many more people than those who passed by our booths that day. Yeah. So just to give you a sense of that impact, in 2022, between April and September, our exhibits garnered over 950,000 impressions, 5,000 of which were sort of deeper engagements, whether that be online or in person. And in 2023, we've only had 2 events so far. Engagements. So we're feeling very optimistic about that, given that we have more events to come in the season, many more. The last thing about impact that I'll mention is that we are actually working right now to assess the impact of the clicking the number of people who come by, but we're doing some surveying and a study that is with the help of BC and our B Center staff. And I'll just say, to be quick about this, that it would be awesome to have anybody here, as well as those from your network, participate in that study. It is compensated, and all you have to do is take 2 5-minute surveys and attend the exhibits briefly in person. So Frank will post that link in the chat. Next slide, please. So we already know that you all have unique strengths in that you're a collective who we've already seen tonight is collaborative and impacting each other and learning from each other. We're really excited to be in this room tonight, virtual room, and to continue to learn how we might add value to your work. Some options that are listed here we're excited about include some of the behavior-centered design trainings that actually Nathan and Megan attended recently. And we're talking about fall timing for BCD opportunity that would be offered to everybody in the room here and beyond. We also have subject matter experts in both food, energy, transportation, carbon offset credits that we are happy to bring in for presentations, as well as our behavior and environment center folks. And then, you know, we have these displays that we're happy to bring to events, and we've talked to a few of the folks in the room about an event down the line that we could help organize with you all, and that would be just an opportunity for increased collaborating with each other in person. And yeah, so we're happy to take questions. I know that there was maybe 1 or 2 posted while we were going, so here's our contact information. Don't know how much time we have precisely, but happy to answer a few quick questions. Thanks so much for your time.
Okay, well, thank you. We've gone a little bit over time, but really appreciate everybody's patience. Appreciate everybody's participation tonight. It's wonderful to hear all the things going on in your communities. And please let us know how we can even better support you. So if you have questions or ideas or thoughts on the kinds of further kinds of support that we could offer, we'd love to hear them. And with that, I'll bid everybody a good night, and we will be sharing the recording of this event as well as some of the resources. So thank you everybody, and good night.